In her confirmation hearing to head the Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem said that Donald Trump's promise to secure the border through deportation remains the top goal.
President Trump has been very clear that his priority is going to be deporting criminals, those who have broken our laws and perpetuated violence in our communities. His next priority is going to be those with final removal orders and focus on those individuals who have long overstayed and that there is a consequence for ignoring our federal laws.
Let's bring in John Sandweg, the former acting director of ICE, U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. It's good to see you, John. I wonder what you make of the incoming Trump administration's border strategy of focusing first on this deportation of violent criminals. And when he talks about even broader deportation, how would that work?
Yeah, Chris, look, I don't think anyone really objects to this idea that we should use ICE as a public safety agency first and foremost, right? Identify individuals who are in our country unlawfully, who are committing violent and serious crimes. I think the problem, though, is this stated justification for this mass deportation. The tactics that they're talking about in that second population she referenced, people with a final order or people who long overstayed their visa or long, been in this country a long time. Those populations have really no nexus at all to public safety. And in fact, oftentimes, Chris, quite the opposite, right? These are individuals who have gone through the immigration court system, but were not detained. And that means that either ICE cut them loose because they don't pose a public safety threat, or an immigration judge released them. And so I guess there's a disconnect here between the rhetoric of saying we have to do this to protect America and then the populations and the tactics that we keep hearing about that they're going to employ.
Governor Noem said she would reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy and would end the use of the CPB One app. That's that legal pathway that was created by the Biden administration for migrants to enter the country. What effect do you think those kinds of changes would have? And logistically, how hard is it to change policies?
Well, I think those types of policies are going to actually, there's some of these policies that are very hard to change logistically, right? Require resources and are going to take years to actually implement. But these policies at the border, I expect on day one, they're going to cancel the app. They're going to, try to implement Remain in Mexico, things of that nature. Look, I think the question will be, what is the unintended consequence of all of this, right? One benefit we've obtained over the last few years at the border is most migrants have surrendered. We've captured their fingerprints, captured their biometrics. We're able to run background checks. What we're going to see, I think, as we cut off all those kind of access points that the Biden administration created, is we're going to see people sneaking back into the country where we don't know who's successfully entered. And the challenge is it's going to be a really quick shift for the Border Patrol, where we go from managing these large populations who overwhelmed our asylum system, to be sure, but now to going back to interdicting people as they sneak through the desert, Chris, and try to evade capture and get into the country. And so there are going to be some costs to this, and it'll be very interesting to see what kind of strain that puts on the Border Patrol as migrants and the smugglers shift tactics as a result of these changes.
So, John, there's also the question of who's going to be in charge. NBC News reports that Kristi Noem would be actually answering to the border czar, Tom Homan, and Deputy Chief of Staff for Policy, Stephen Miller, on immigration, so inside the White House. What might that mean for getting things done?
Look, I got to tell you, she's in an unenviable position, right? Here she is. She's statutorily responsible for DHS. The most important and the most visible aspect of that job is border security and immigration enforcement. And it turns out she's probably not going to be in charge of that, right? So there's always and often there's tension that forms between DHS and the White House. And they certainly saw that during the first Trump administration as they cycled through a number of acting secretaries. But there's never been a border czar before, someone whose stated job is basically to who has oversight over the secretary at DHS. And I think operationally, this could create a lot of confusion. Who do you take directives from? Is it the secretary? Is it the border czar? Certainly, I know came up today in the hearing, there were questions about oversight. Is Tom Homan accountable? Does he, typically White House advisors don't testify before Congress. The secretary will. But ultimately, I think just from Governor Noem's perspective, having been a governor, and now here you are, the biggest, most visible, politically important issue of your cabinet position, you're not really in charge of, and that's a very difficult place to be.